Lead has been used in firearm ammunition for hundreds of years because it's easy to work due to its softness and low melting point. It's very dense and is relatively easy to locate and remove from the earth. However, lead is also a dangerous heavy metal with no benefit to biological systems. The ill effects of lead to humans and wildlife have been well documented for hundreds of years. Lead was removed from paint, plumbing, and gasoline to prevent poisoning in humans. Lead shot was banned for waterfowl hunting in the United States in 1991 to reduce lead poisoning in waterfowl and birds of prey. But studies show that wildlife, including eagles, hawks, vultures, and California condors, continue to die each year due to lead poisoning. Research has shown the major source is lead-based rifle bullets. We now know that lead-based bullets fragment to a much greater extent than was previously thought. Studies have documented that when a copper-jacketed lead core bullet travels through a game animal, it breaks apart and leaves tiny but toxic lead pieces throughout the bullet's path and up to 14 inches away from the wound channel. Scavenging wildlife ingest these fragments from remains left in the field, which can result in poisoning and death.
Lead is a very potent neurotoxin, and when bald eagles, golden eagles, and other wildlife species ingest something like bullet fragments, it ends up in their bloodstream. From there, it affects their nervous systems, leading to convulsions, tremors, digestive paralysis, and ultimately a slow, painful death. One thing that people don't realize is that bald eagles and golden eagles spend a lot of time feeding on dead animals and their remains, such as gut piles. When they find those gut piles, and lead bullets have been used many times, those gut piles have lead fragments.
I'm Dr. Anne Marguerite Coyle, and I've been studying golden eagles in western North Dakota for the last 8 years. You never feel good when you find an injured eagle or a sick eagle, and what's particularly disturbing with the lead-poisoned eagles is just how vulnerable they are. They have no defense mechanism. They're completely tame, lethargic. They can't fly very well. They're exhausted, so they're much more susceptible to weather, predation, or any other type of cause of death. When we find an injured eagle or an eagle that we suspect to be suffering from lead poisoning, we send them off to a facility to be tested. Sometimes what they'll do is, in order to determine whether the bird is suffering from lead poisoning, they can do two things. They can test the tissues, they can test the blood, and they can also x-ray the bird to actually look for spent ammunition or lead particles within the bird's digestive tract or lodged in tissues. Neither of the birds that I had found that were positively determined to have lead poisoning survived. Neither of them did. Other raptors have been documented in other states and parts of the country to also suffer from lead poisoning. And in North Dakota, we have a number of those species here. The challenge is finding those birds. Once they've died, North Dakota is a very sparsely populated area. In order to determine the cause of death of any particular bird, you have to find the bird. And so in the open spaces in North Dakota, we suspect that this may be a larger problem, but because we have so few people actually encountering these birds, we're unable to make a definitive determination of their death. I think we learned a huge lesson from waterfowl and the number of birds that were affected by lead poisoning there. And when you look at raptors, a large portion of them, especially during the winter, are consuming carcasses. They typically, if you go out and hunt prairie dogs, they'll respond to the shooting and actually come to feed on the dead prairie dogs. One of the discussions that we had at the North American meeting for the conservation of the golden eagle was the difficulty in actually determining what percentage of mortalities were caused by one factor or another, or what were the dominating food sources for golden eagles. And what I think we have to remember when it comes to mortality is if we can minimize any cause of mortality, that's important. And in the particular case of spent ammunition, we know that that is causing lead poisoning in species and causing birds to die. If we can remove that, risk from the population, that's a huge benefit.
Fortunately, alternatives to lead bullets have been developed that deliver a very lethal and effective punch that quickly and humanely kills game animals. Non-lead bullets made of copper and copper alloys, developed as high-performance bullets and as copper ammunition, have gained in popularity in recent years, and a great variety of calibers and bullet options have become available. Sportsmen have a long tradition of wildlife conservation, and many of the habitats and species that have been protected are the direct result of hunters' conservation efforts and financial contributions. The use of non-lead ammunition is another way that hunters can contribute to wildlife conservation and to a healthy environment. In 2010 and 2011, Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota undertook a major elk reduction effort, using park staff and nearly 400 members of the public as volunteers. To ensure the safety of scavengers as well as the meat used for human consumption, non-lead ammunition was used to remove 868 elk from the park.
I'm Valerie Naylor, Superintendent of Theodore Roosevelt National Park. After 2002, the National Park Service was no longer able to ship members of the deer family to any other areas of the country, including areas within the state. And so we had to come up with another way to manage the elk population in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. We looked at a range of alternatives for managing the elk population in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. The preferred alternative that we selected consisted of using volunteers along with park staff to shoot elk in the national park to reduce the population.
To my knowledge, this is the most extensive efforts taken to remove elk using non-lead ammunition of this type of any program in the country. So it'll be interesting to see what the data tells us in terms of the efficiency and the effectiveness of the ammunition. Thus far, in talking with the coordinators who are overseeing the project, it appears that the non-lead ammunition is working well for them. Unlike lead core bullets, which typically fragment into lots of tiny pieces when they impact an animal, the non-lead bullets stay in one piece. And what that means is you don't have a bunch of toxic lead fragments that are found in the gut piles or the carcass that ends up poisoning a variety of scavengers.
It's worked really well. We've had a very low wounding rate, so the non-lead ammo has worked out very well. We have had no complaints from the volunteers, so we're very pleased with that it works, number one, and then we're reducing the amount of lead on the landscape, number two.
It's imperative that they practice with the non-lead ammunition. We're finding at the range that it acts differently than a lead bullet, and if they aren't practicing with it, it shows up. The non-lead ammunition has been working well in the field. It's proved by the amount of animals that have been taken this year.
Growing up, I used a lot of lead ammunition for hunting and for just general use purposes. This is actually the first time that I have used non-lead alternative copper bullets, and to me they're doing what they're supposed to do. They say they hold together, which they do. We found several bullets and they're intact. They have a nice flower petal when they're coming out the other side of the animal, and to me they're working great. I don't have a lot of experience knowing on how an elk reacts from a lead shot, but these copper bullets are doing their jobs, and when it comes down to it, a lot of it's shot placement, but when you do make a good shot, these copper bullets are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're bringing the animal down. You know, if you're using the right equipment and the right caliber, I don't see any problem with switching to non-lead alternative bullets.
We've been stressing that these volunteers, when they come out, that they need to shoot this copper. It does not shoot the same as lead. When we first got our guns, we shot our leads through them and we had them all dialed in, and some of our guns, you know, shoot 8 to 12 inches different. For the knockdown or killing power, I mean, it's been great. Lead does fragment more than this copper. I don't think we've had any of our bullets that we've recovered from the carcass, or from my experience, we've had them all whole. I mean, nothing's broke apart. Those lead bullets, from my previous experience hunting back home in South Dakota, those bullets do break apart some, and these copper bullets staying together and doing real good.
We have had good experiences with it. I mean, these copper bullets and their copper alloys, they don't fragment like a lead bullet does, and they transfer 100% of that energy into that animal. And for what we're trying to do, it's very efficient, it's very ethical. There hasn't been a downside to the copper ammunition. I think it's all positives. You don't have the effects of lead on humans and women and children they're obvious and they're known, so you cut those factors out and it's a better thing for people and wildlife.
Oh, it's worked great. It does require a different scope zero from lead for the most part on everybody's guns, but once you get your guns dialed in with that non-toxic shot, it's just one less thing to worry about.
I really felt that using non-lead ammo made no difference in the marksmanship or the shooting. I was a little leery about it, but I really didn't see a difference myself.
Well, this is my first experience with the non-lead ammo, and I found as I've practiced using this at the range that the ballistics are quite acceptable. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to see how effective they'll be in the field.
I have to say I'm a convert to that. First of all, I started with a 325, which was hard to get factory shells, so I had to have some custom loaded, and I had very good success with that. But then my backup rifle is a 270, and I bought off-the-shelf federal ammunition for that, and they group just as well as any lead bullet I've ever shot. I'm going to convert to the copper bullets out of my 270 for shooting deer.
Yeah, they want the non-lead or non-toxic ammo, basically for the meat, for one, that they donate. They don't have to worry about any lead fragments in it. And then, of course, for the eagles and stuff like that, eating any carcasses or anything like that, there's not any lead getting transferred there either.
It has been a very effective ammunition in the field. We've had good luck with it. I wouldn't have expected any lower wounding losses with with lead alternatives. The pros I think are certainly that we're not putting lead into the environment, which is I think an obvious pro, or it should be an obvious pro for people to support it. We're also, if you're a family person, you have small children, pregnant wife, things like that, you're obviously not subjecting them to potential source of lead that can cause issues for those particular demographics. So those are some of the pros. In terms of efficiency, harvesting an animal, we've had good luck with the non-toxic ammunition. I think there's a lot of lead products that would have killed the animals certainly as well. It's shot placement. Shot placement is, in terms of getting the animal on the ground, that's really the most critical component.
My name is Ann Pollard, and I work with the 7 North Dakota Community Action Agencies, which are nonprofit community action agencies throughout North Dakota. We started Sportsmen Against Hunger in 2004 to help food pantries meet the needs that they have to serve clients a quality meat protein source. Sportsmen Against Hunger struggled with a lead issue a few years back. Lead is a very serious issue, and the program took it very seriously. Basically, what happened is the North Dakota Department of Health, after much research, came out with a statement that said pregnant women and children under the age of 6 should not eat game harvested with lead ammunition. So we are following their recommendation and continue to follow their recommendation with our Sportsmen Against Hunger program. The great thing about the Theodore Roosevelt Park project is that it was all non-lead ammunition. With venison, typically the food pantries screen to make sure the families don't have multiple young children in the home, to make sure no one's pregnant in the home before they would disperse the meat. But with the elk meat, because it was all non-lead ammunition, that wasn't a concern at all. So this is just fantastic that it can go to any family in the state, and food pantries aren't having to screen whether it can go to a family or not go to a family. So straight across the board, this can just go out to everyone.
It's National Park Service policy to use non-lead ammunition whenever we are taking animals in the field. And that's very important because one carcass in the field can poison several bald eagles, for example, or golden eagles, both of which we have in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And I hope that others will consider using non-lead ammunition for hunting outside the park, because it's really environmentally friendly and it's a lot better for our health too, because you don't have to worry about ingesting lead fragments from meat that you may eat.
Using non-lead ammunition makes sense. It makes sense from an environmental health perspective, a species health perspective, as well as a human health perspective. We go out of our way to create a safe home environment for our children that are void of lead. It makes sense that we would do that for our larger home, the Earth, for the species that we also feed on and that live and share the space with us.